everyone. So today I actually wanted to do a little bit of a different video. I actually wanted to share with everyone my story with my autoimmune / rare blood disorder, which is called ITP, or idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura. I know, it's a big one, but it's something that I've been living with, coping with, surviving with since April 2015. And it's so rare, and I thought that it would be good to bring some awareness to it and to share my experiences with it. And the purpose of the video really is not to generate any kind of pity, like, you know, it's just about understanding, really just trying to create awareness here. And I hope that you all listen to this and take this all in with a really open mind and open heart. So what is ITP? Well, ITP, or idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura, is a rare bleeding disorder. Sometimes it's referred to as an autoimmune disease too, so there's a few different ways. But essentially your bloodstream has these little things in it called platelets. And what platelets do is they stop your body from bleeding out. You know, when you have a cut or an injury, the things called platelets are the ones that actually stop you from bleeding out. So normal platelet counts are between 140,000 to 400,000 and above. Anyone with less than 100,000 platelets is considered to have ITP. And there's a few ways that you can have ITP. So one of the ways is that your immune system actually attacks platelets. So in an autoimmune disease, your immune system actually starts to regard some natural parts of your body as enemies, and so they'll start to attack them. The other way that you can have ITP is that your body just isn't producing enough platelets. So as I shared, you know, ITP is really rare. Only 3.3 out of 100,000 adults every year are diagnosed with ITP, and those affected are usually between the 30 and 60 age group. The other thing that I have read up on is that ITP is actually really common with children, like really young children, that, you know, after a really bad cold or something, they'll have really low platelets because their bodies just aren't strong enough to produce more. Children usually recover from it pretty quickly, and that's not to say that children don't have chronic ITP. So there's also a few other ways that you can have ITP. You know, you can just be diagnosed with it for a short amount of time, and then you can have chronic ITP, which means that it persists for a year or longer. So I have chronic ITP because it is 2017 and I still have very low platelets, and I've been this way since April 2015, possibly before that, but April 2015 is when I was officially diagnosed. And so what are the signs and symptoms of ITP? There's a few things, but people with ITP usually experience bruising, lots of it, not just your usual like, oh, I stubbed my knee against something and I got a bruise, but it just happens spontaneously and you have no idea where it's come from. They also experience petechiae, and those are tiny little red dots that basically your blood vessels have burst in certain spots and they just look like tiny little red dots. Long nosebleeds, bleeding gums, as well as unusual menstrual bleeding or blood in your urine or stool. So I also wanted to share with you all a little bit about my story with ITP. Now, as I have shared with you all, I was officially diagnosed in April 2015, but there were a few things that happened before that. So I actually remember, you know, pretty vividly some of the things that I was noticing about my body before I was diagnosed with ITP. I think from December 2014 up until I was diagnosed, I remember being sick with a cold for a really long time, that my nose just wouldn't stop being congested, wouldn't stop running. I was in my second year of grad school and there were a lot of things happening. I was starting my job search, trying to finish my capstone project, and I always was used to getting sick around December and being sick for a while, but never for months, you know. In addition to feeling constantly congested and just like I always had a cold, sometime in March I started feeling really tired all the time. I just wanted to sleep, and there were moments when I would get out of bed and I would be really lightheaded. I just thought, okay, well, you know, I was probably sleeping too long. I just found other ways to kind of justify what was happening to me. Then sometime in April, I started noticing more bruising than usual happening on my legs, and I had always been clumsy, so I was I think I was really just like, okay, well, I must have hit myself on something like when I was sleeping, right? The bruises didn't really concern me because they also weren't huge. They didn't look any different from any bruises I'd had in the past. There were a few mornings where I woke up super early with nosebleeds. And mind you, I am no stranger to nosebleeds. There was actually a time in my life when I started menstruating when I was a teenager, and I would always get a nosebleed right before starting my period. So nosebleeds are nothing new to me, you know, but these were really long nosebleeds. Like, they were happening for 45 minutes to an hour at a time. And then I remember there was one time when a really huge, like, kind of blood vessel like thing came out of my nose, and I was just like, ugh, this is disgusting, but it's also like really cool. So again, I really didn't think much of it, right? But this happened several times over the course of maybe a week or two. So I actually posted about one of these really long nosebleeds one night, right? And one of my friends was like, maybe you have low platelets. And I was like, nah. I totally dismissed it, and I was just like, no, it's probably, you know, all these other things happening. Then I started seeing tiny little red dots all over my arms, like all over here. I would see tiny little red dots, and that was really weird, but not like so weird that I went to Kaiser and I was like, hey, what's going on with my skin, right? But it got to the point where, like, I would start noticing my skin would bruise from really weird things. Like, I remember I was sitting on a couch and it had like a quilt on it, and I was leaning back against it, and when I got up off of the couch, I'd only been sitting on the couch for like 20 minutes. When I got up off of the couch, there was marks on my back where the little holes are in the quilt. And I was just like, what the hell? Like, what? I just thought it was weird, but I didn't think that something was wrong with me. Then I started noticing that my gums would bleed a lot more than usual. And I don't have the best gum health, so I am used to seeing my gums bleeding when I brush my teeth, which I know is a really bad thing. Trust me, my dentists have told me many times that I probably have gingivitis. It got to the point where I would have to tear up pieces of paper towel, wet them, you know, squeeze them out a little bit, and then just pop them into the places where where my gums were bleeding the most. Kind of like, you know, when you go to the dentist and then they do stuff, you start bleeding, they put some gauze in there. I had to basically do that with paper towel because my gums would just spontaneously bleed so much. So one day I posted about all of these things happening on Twitter, and my cousin told me to go get my complete blood counts done. I called an advice nurse and they connected me to a doctor who was like, has this happened before? And I said no, but you know what, my first cousin on my mom's side does have what she calls ITP, and she suggested that maybe I have this, but I don't know. But she did tell me to go to talk to someone and get my complete blood counts done. So they were like, yeah, okay, you know, it's not really genetic, it's not a genetic thing, but go get your blood counts done at a lab and then we'll talk to you soon. So me and my sister, we went to a lab and I got my counts done, and then on our way home I got a call from the same doctor, and he was like, you need to get to an emergency room right now, like right now. And he sounded really urgent, and he told me, you know, your platelets are at 5,000 and the normal count is 140,000, so you are at critical count right now where you could potentially bleed out and die. And I was like, what? Like, what? And I was sitting there, my sister was driving, and I was on the phone, and I was just like, okay. And I feel like I think I was in shock. Like, I was just like, one, not understanding really what he was talking about because I had never heard of platelets. And two, I was just really confused as to, I could not fathom like the magnitude of what he was talking about. So anyway, we drove to the ER and we waited and waited and waited. And I think maybe like 4 hours later, I was finally admitted, and they did all my labs again. I had to re-explain myself, and then they poked me like 5 more times. Then they put me on a bed, you know, put me in my own little quarters, and my whole family came by. We were just waiting and waiting, Then someone came in and they told me, you know, your counts now are at 2,000. And, you know, just 4.5 hours before that, they were at 5,000. So my counts had rapidly decreased in just a few hours. And everyone that was talking to me, all the nurses, the doctors, you know, they were all like, you know, that's really concerning because, you know, anything could happen. You could fall down on the sidewalk and your head would bleed out, and then you would die because you would never stop bleeding. You would just lose a lot of blood. Just everything they were saying was just like, you could die. And I was just like, what? Like, I really, to me, I just could not even imagine that. I was like, what? Like, is it that serious? Because I really didn't, I mean, I had been feeling mostly fine. Like, sure, all of these things were happening to me, but it's not like I was fainting or feeling really sick, or, you know, I think just the way that I was experiencing these signs of ITP compared to how someone else might feel, it just didn't seem like it was anything serious, you know? But anyway, I stayed overnight at the ER. I think my mom stayed with me. I got poked several more times, which was real fun. They also gave me IVIG, which is kind of an immunoglobulin, like a liquid steroid injection thing. And that's supposed to help with my platelet count. So they injected me with that. I stayed overnight. The nurse woke me up at 6 in the morning to do my counts again. And then when I met my hematologist, who would be my specialist for the next year and a half, the hematologist told me that my counts had only gone up to 6,000, but that it was normal to take some time. Then she sent me off and discharged me with instructions to take 60 milligrams of prednisone every day for the next week. And she also told me that I basically couldn't do anything, that she would caution against me driving anywhere, that she wanted me to really rest and take some time off, basically not do anything. And my parents took that seriously. Like, I couldn't even wash the dishes, I couldn't clear the table, I couldn't do anything. It was like I was 6 again, and I couldn't touch a knife. Like, that's how it was. I would try and like handle just a knife to cut an apple or something and be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Don't touch it. You know, again, I was in my master's program and I was actually a month away from graduating. So during this time, I had several programs going on that I was leading in, and, you know, I was getting ready to finish writing my capstone project and to graduate. And because of what happened and my doctor's orders, I couldn't go back to work for 2 weeks and I couldn't do anything. So that was really hard for me, and I didn't want to do anything either because I was still in such shock that this was happening to me. I felt like my body was betraying me, you know, because I had been eating so healthy over the last 6 months. At that point, I'd been feeling really good about myself, and then this happened, right? I was doing so well. I felt like I was doing so well for my body, and my body was just like, nope, nope, we're still not doing that great. So as far as treatment goes for ITP, there's quite a few different options, but I'm just gonna talk about the one that I have been going through. And that has been through an oral prescription called prednisone, and it's a steroid drug. Trust me, it ain't like that. I ain't getting buff off of this shit. I wish, kind of, not really. There's a lot of side effects to prednisone, and people experience it very differently. I would say that I actually had a very mild reaction and experience with prednisone compared to other people, and it was still a terrible experience regardless. So I started off with 60 milligrams of prednisone every day, and these were a few things that I experienced. So I definitely got the insomnia because steroids, it ramps you up with energy. So I definitely experienced the insomnia. But there were some times where I would experience prednisone actually making me really sleepy. There is another thing about, you know, it also can induce anxiety within you. You can have some headaches, some stomach aches, and things like that. The other really bad thing that I experienced was the mood swings. Prednisone has an ability to make you feel like you're not yourself. And I would have periods or moments of aggression with my family members, and I honestly was not sure if I was being aggressive or moody because of this emotional thing that I was going through, or if it was because of the prednisone. And that's the really shitty thing about it, is that I really could not tell if my emotions were my own or if they were because of the prednisone. My counts did react really well to being on high doses of prednisone. At some point, my counts were at above 200,000, which is amazing. So I was feeling really good about that. And then I had tapered down, and then I had tapered off completely, and I graduated. So that's, woo! I graduated. I still, you know, despite having this experience come up last minute, you know, a month before I was ready to graduate with my master's degree, I still made it happen. So I graduated, and then a week later, I went back to my labs, and my counts dropped down to 50. I think it had gone from 150,000 to 50,000 in just a few days. So my hematologist was like, okay, maybe we need to taper you off more slowly this time. So she had me get back on prednisone, but only on the 20 milligram. So this was gonna be another 4-week course of prednisone. So I did it, and this time around, because I was on it for a longer period, I was a lot more hungry. So I had an increased appetite. I was eating a lot more, which then made me get the moon face, the dreaded prednisone moon face. And what that is when you're on prednisone, your fat builds up in different ways, typically around your face and your neck. And sometimes the back of your neck as well. So I started getting a little chubby over here. I did start gaining weight. You know, that first month on prednisone, I had maybe gained 5 pounds. But my second course of prednisone, that's when I really started gaining weight and seeing all these other side effects. I was a lot more moody. I was getting a lot of anxiety as well. I started feeling a lot more anxious about a lot of things. I think by August, I had tapered down a lot more, but it's still, my counts were not improving that much. Nothing was changing. Things were going low, things were going up. It was just fluctuating, and I really just didn't know what to do about it. And I felt brave enough to also start seeing a hematologist in the area. And this new hematologist and my new physician and my new chiropractor, all of them were so eager to get to know me and get to know all of my symptoms and everything that I was feeling. And that was really new for me because my other hematologists, my other physicians, they were there from the beginning. So I think that they felt like they knew what I was going through, right? But this new team of care providers, they wanted to know everything. So I told them everything I was experiencing, and we ran a whole bunch of new tests from December to January. I even got my bone marrow biopsy done, and all of my labs. So I got several labs where they looked at my vitamin levels and other nutrient levels, and everything looked fine within the normal distribution, right? Then when I got my bone marrow biopsy done, they said that it was functioning fine, that it really just is consistent with the fact that I have ITP, but it didn't say that anything unusual was happening. So it's not that my bone marrow is not producing platelets. I got an ultrasound to see, you know, how big are my liver and my spleen, but they were normal size and they were functioning great. So I started feeling really good about it, right? I was just like, okay, well, you know what? Nothing unusual is happening with my body except for the fact that my immune system is destroying platelets. So that must mean that there's something I can do to remedy this, right? That must mean that this can be fixed. This can be figured out. I wouldn't need to do surgery. You know, people typically, if something is going on with their spleen to interfere with the platelet production or anything, then they usually do a splenectomy or other things, you know, but none of that was happening to me. It's just that my immune system was attacking my platelets. So I really was just like, okay, you know what? This makes me feel good because now I know that there is nothing serious going on in my body besides what I already know. And then I recently just made time. I got my labs done, and my platelet counts were at 15,000. Here's the thing though, I have not been experiencing symptoms. I have not been spontaneously bruising. I haven't seen any petechiae. My gums haven't been bleeding. I haven't had any nosebleeds. I felt pretty good. So for me to then see that my count was still very low at 15,000, even though I felt great and I wasn't experiencing any symptoms, it hurt a little bit. You know, it was again me feeling like my body was betraying me or I wasn't doing something right. I thought I had coped with this. I thought I had dealt with this and figured out how I felt about all of this, and it was clear that I hadn't, that I still hadn't really allowed myself mentally and emotionally to heal from this whole experience. Where do I go from here? I don't really know. I want to continue to try other natural methods, so I'm gonna keep consulting about that. And there's even, you know, there's a few people who've suggested like maybe I just need to think about, you know, what is my life like on medication versus not on medication and not experiencing any symptoms? Is my quality of life better that way? At the same time, yeah, there's still a huge fear that anything can happen. You know, even when you have surgeries, you have to have certain amounts of platelets in your body. And if you don't, then you can't do the surgery. This is kind of where I'm at right now. I'm really considering what my options are, what my quality of life can look like, what I want it to look like. So I'll keep everyone updated. And I really want to thank everyone for listening to my ITP story and for my family and my friends for showing so much support to me during this time. To Jessica and Tito Cesar, you know, my fellow survivors in this thing, and to all of my other Purple Warriors. I learned so much from you, Sarah and Kim. Yeah, so that is my story with ITP. I'm living with it. That's it for today. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope that you come back again soon. Bye. I'm filming. Okay. No.